Welcome to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and this is going to be a recap for NAL Playday number 7 for the second stage of the 2022 season. First game of the day, 7-1 victory, Parabellum over Mirage. And you might have expected a little bit closer of a game based on the stages these two teams have been having. Obviously, Parabellum has been far better than Mirage, as everybody has, but Mirage finally got their first victory in the previous playday against Beast Coast, and Parabellum also coming off a win against SSG. Both of them won their games on this map, on Skyscraper, where they decided to play, but I don't know, Parabellum just comes out of the gates and destroys Mirage. Probably the biggest beatdown we've seen this stage thus far. I don't think we've seen a 7-0 this stage. Absolute destruction. Mirage generally a lot better on defense than on attack, and Skyscraper generally a fairly defender-sided map. And Mirage even started on the defense. They only got one round, so that really goes to show how much better Parabellum were in this matchup than Mirage was. And then community prediction, 96% in favor of Parabellum. You might give Mirage a little bit more credit because they finally got their first win. They were on about similar predictions before they got a win, and then again finally they got a win even on this map, so maybe you could have given them a little bit more credit, but I mean, I understand the sentiment there. Looking at the stats, yeah, Kool-Aid going insane, almost a 2.0 rating and 11 KDs, just some of the highest recorded stats we have in the NAL, and we've had a few over 2.0 ratings, I think, this stage. I want to say a couple of them against SSG, right? But an 11 KD it's just one of the highest all time, I suppose. I mean, in order to get that high of a KD, you have to get either 1 or 0 kills, and then, of course, if you have 0 deaths, I mean, how are you really calculating it? Infinite ratio or whatever, right? But, okay, getting 0 or 1 deaths and then above 10 kills is generally a rarity. It doesn't happen that often in T1 competition. 100% cost coming out from 3 of the players. Also note, Kool-Aid was playing the Thermite Smoke, so very rare to see such a dominant scoreline come out from a support player, even 2 plants on the board. Crazy game for him. And then on the other hand, Mirage obviously getting destroyed. Benji a little bit better than most of the other players, but Nyx, Melted not doing too good, and obviously Kento and especially Marmalade doing really badly. So we see the Thermite Smoke main going insane on Parabellum, and we see the Thermite Smoke main doing really poorly on Mirage. And so I think this was, again, the most decisive game of the stage, and we actually had 2 more pretty decisive results on this day as a whole, and we had 2 pretty close results. And I think this might have been the shortest day in terms of, the second shortest day. I think in terms of round count, there was one that's like 1 or 2 rounds shorter, and then some that are also fairly short, but we've had a lot of pretty close days. So I think in contrast, this was a pretty short one. And also in general, I think this was the easiest day to predict all stage. I think day number 1, maybe pretty easy as well, but I still think this was probably the easiest one. If you didn't get at least 3 right, you were trolling. If you got 4, that's probably par for the course. And well, I got 5 out of 5 because I called my shot on the next match. So let's move over to that next match. Right, second game of the day, Astralis versus Xset, one of the close games for the day. It was a 7-5 victory for Astralis, so they went 8-7 last stage, a victory for Astralis, and now we see a 7-5 victory for Astralis, so 2-0 against Xset, I suppose, and it was even them who eliminated Xset from the Charlotte Major. It was 2-1 in terms of map count. So Xset has taken a single map off of Astralis, but they've yet to defeat them in a match. And so between stage 1 and Charlotte and stage 2 here, Astralis is 4-1 on maps over Xset. And we play on Villa. That is the same map that these two teams played last stage. And NA really likes Villa. There's a lot of Villa today. And of course, you're probably aware I'm recording this after playday number 8. And there's a lot of Villa in that day. I think 5 Villas between playdays 7 and 8, and it's just the most played map. And okay, so that's our playing ground, and I think this was even a little bit of a comeback if I remember right. Yeah, so Astralis gets the first round, Xset gets the next 4 rounds. So Xset is up 4-1, Astralis gets 2 rounds, Xset gets 1 more, and then Astralis gets 4 rounds in a row of their own. So they came back from 1-4 to win the game 7-5. They didn't drop any points. They maybe lost a little bit more round differential than they would have liked, but going into a match like this, I think you're perfectly happy to just take those full 3 points. And community prediction, indeed, more in favor of Xset than Astralis, just based on raw performance, raw numbers from this stage. You'd expect Xset to win, but as I've been mentioning before, Astralis' performance has been hampered more so than most other teams because of COVID and related factors. So although Xset was ahead by points, there is a significant reason. So I did pick Astralis to win this game, but I also wouldn't have been surprised to see Xset win this game, especially with how the first half or so of the game progressed with Xset going up 4-1. Okay, looking at the stats, it's Yaga on top, as he has often been, and not very impressive stats coming out from the rest of the XSET players. But you could say the same thing for Astralis. Nobody doing especially well, except for obviously Iconic really popping off. He's had a really rough stage, and this is one of his only really good games. 2.0 KD, 2-0 on entry, 83% cost. He was the difference maker. He was the reason that they were able to win this game. Even a slightly worse performance, they would have gone to overtime probably, and maybe lost it from there. A especially brutal game coming out from Shuttle, and Forest much worse than his performances this stage, and then pretty okay from J-Nano and DP Fire. So again, a little bit of an upset, and I don't think the biggest upset ever. I think it was realistic to call this victory for Astralis, and it puts them on a good track going forward, and it keeps things ever so competitive as they have been in the NAL this stage. Let's go into game number 3. Okay, third game of the day, Beast Coast versus Sonics. Beast Coast make the very bold decision to take Sonics to Chalet, which is probably Sonics' best map. I do think a big reason that Beast Coast made this decision was based on their performance against SSG on this map earlier in the stage, and particularly Sweater's performance. He went absolutely crazy. I don't know if anyone else on the team even did notably well. And Sonics, I don't think they've played it this stage, but they were pretty good on it last stage, and they were pretty bad last stage overall. They went, I think, 2-1 on the map. So in the first half of the stage, they lost to Parabellum, and then in the back half, maybe even just the very 2 final games, they beat TSM and Space Station on it, and that was even subbing in their coach for Rexon in the TSM game. So yeah, I don't know. It seems like a mistake. I think Beast Coast is a little bit of a bold team. They do sometimes like to take their opponents to maps that their opponent is quite good on, and even in some cases the map that their opponent is probably the best on. And part of that could be the fact that, yeah, they maybe got a little bit too bold based on their earlier performance. I don't even think SSG is especially good on Chalet anymore. Maybe they were quite good on it back in like stages 2 and 3 last season, and well, SSG was just really good in general, only dropping 2 maps over the course of those 2 stages. But also, I mean, it's hard to say how diverse Beast Coast map pool is. They're probably trying to work on it, but they're still a relatively new team, so they only have a handful of pretty good maps, so sometimes their map pool might not line up especially well against their opponents. But right, I mean, I probably would have taken Sonic somewhere else. Even Bank seems like a better choice. Beast Coast has had maybe mixed success, but a decent amount of success. They beat XSET just earlier this stage on it. Probably would have opted for Bank, and they probably had even a little bit more in mind for Chalet. But I don't even know how much they could have counter-stratted Sonics, given that Sonics haven't played the map since last stage. So, yeah, just all of this to say that it was kind of a curious decision, and obviously it did not work out for them in the end. And looking at the community votes, about 3/4 of voters in favor of Sonics. I think this makes sense. Maybe Beast Coast had a little bit more upset potential than that, but I do think Sonics were a decent bit the favorites coming into it, and everyone getting destroyed on Beast Coast. Everyone from 3 to 5 kills over the course of a whole 9 rounds is not great, obviously. Below a 0.5 KPR for most of the players. And then over on the Sonics, it is Yeti on top. Great to see Yeti having a good game, especially good game. He's had a pretty bad stage overall, and going +7 on KD over a 2.0 and 2-0 on entry, and then almost perfect cost. And pretty much all of that was on Thatcher. I don't think he did much on the defense. Maybe all of his attacks, or all of his kills were on the attack. And then Grixer continues to have a good game, just like pretty much every game. He is trending back towards the top. By the final play day, he might be back in that #1 position as he had been in past stages. And I mean, yeah, just everybody doing well. Rexon, and even maybe most surprisingly, Super 7-3, so over a 2.0 KD and 3 plants to boot is great. And then Kansan here holding down the fort. Doesn't look very impressive compared to the rest of his team, but a 1.15 rating it's great. And I mean, just to keep bragging on it, you'll notice just such a massive disparity. Just if you get rid of the top player on Beast Coast, everyone else has less than half the rating of the lowest rated player on Sonic. It just you could just keep going on and point out mathematical facts about these numbers. But yeah, not only was it a big beatdown in the scoreline, I think most of the rounds were extremely decisive, leading to such a disparity on the scoreboard. And okay, yeah, I think probably enough about that game. Let's go on to the 4th game. Oxygen versus Dark Zero. So this was a pretty big game for Dark Zero. They really, really wanted to get a win here if they wanted to be in a solid position going forward. They if they lose this one, they pretty much just have to win out. And Oxygen, if they win here, it pretty much secures them for the major, and that's exactly what happens. Again, not literally secured for the major after this result, but basically there. And again, Dark Zero in a pretty rough position. Yeah, 7-3 result and another Villa game coming out. Community predictions about 70% in favor of Oxygen. Yeah, Oxygen looked quite good this stage, probably at this point the best looking team in the league. And Dark Zero, yes, coming off of a major victory, but they've been pretty shaky this stage in particular. And then looking at the stats, Newer's on top once again. Foxay, another good performance. Same thing with Laxing and even Dream, and then another not so good performance for Vertical. And I mean, I keep pointing it out, and because it's pretty noticeable, especially compared to his past performances, but I mean, if it works for them, it works for them. If Vertical can hand just all of his kills to Newers and they can get a win as a result, I don't see any problem with it. Maybe it'll end up costing them at some point, but really it hasn't seemed to be an issue. And then over on Dark Zero, only NJR making at all valuable strides. 3-1 on entry, 9-8. KD, obviously not enough to win them a substantial number of rounds, but it is good to see NJR putting up decent numbers when he's had a pretty rough stage overall, and then everyone else not doing especially well, maybe most notably Pamazoo, given the roles he plays and the numbers he's put up this stage thus far. So yeah, Dark Zero looking for a pretty big bounce back, and Oxygen looking to just, I don't know, put the ball into the hole to make it to the major. And yeah, I guess that'll do it for this game. We have one more to talk about. Space Station versus TSM, final game of the day. We go to Clubhouse, and this used to be the infamous Space Station map, and the roster used to be different when that was really the case. They had Canadian, they had Thinking Nade, and so they do still have several of the players, and so the sort of the core of the team that went on that really lengthy streak of wins on this map. TSM, as of the last while, has been generally pretty good on Clubhouse. Clubhouse, a pretty rare map in the NAL these days. Lots of Villa and lots of a few other maps. Clubhouse being pretty rare, maybe because it's so played out. And teams like to, I think in a lot of cases, they want to out-prep their opponent in addition to outplaying their opponent. And you can only do so much on Clubhouse. Yeah, you can maybe come up with some cool bar or gym strats. They're not as played out as the other two objectives, but generally a pretty played out map and pretty tough to defend these days. One of, if not the most attacker-sided map in the NAL. And the scoreline last time these two teams played, last stage was an 8-6 in favor of Space Station, so now we see an 8-6 in favor of TSM. That was on Oregon last time that they played. Okay, looking at the predictions, 80% for TSM is maybe a little bit too much. I'd give SSG a little bit more. As always, this is just community prediction. It's not any sort of odds, and TSM's is generally inflated, but again, if I were trying to make odds out of this, is probably a little bit harsh, and obviously based on the result of the game, yeah, much closer than this would indicate we should have gotten. Looking at the stats, it's Bolo on top, Merc, and Achieve. So the three fraggers finally putting up the top three results. Geo has had a really good stage and pretty mediocre in this game, but just right around a 1.0 rating for both of your support players is pretty solid. Then Skies and Hot and Cold, the two ex-DZ players on the roster, putting up the best numbers. And then Bosco and Rampy struggling pretty badly here. And they might be the two lowest rated players on the team at the moment overall. Maybe that might not be the case. Bosco probably is. He's had pretty bad stats, and as the support player. Rampy, I'm not 100% sure. Might have somebody else below him. And after Playday 7, probably it's him with this level of performance. And okay, anything else notable to look at here? I think SSG pretty bad on the entry. You'll notice they went -6 here, so a +6 coming out from TSM. No players going negative on entry. Bolo especially popping off, and then even a 2-1 from Merc, 2-1 from Shala. Yeah, just obviously very good. The stats look like this was a much more dominant game for TSM, so I would assume that a good number of the rounds at TSM they won pretty dominantly, and as I remember, a lot of them that was the case. A lot of SSG's defenses, they seemed like they were at about parity with their opponents, and then it just fell apart. Their opponents, TSM, that is, just got a bunch of kills. And again, as I mentioned earlier, Clubhouse, generally a pretty attacker-sided map these days, and SSG has been quite poor on defense this stage in general. So maybe they're even lucky to have gone to overtime here. They did get off to a lead, but again, they did start on the advantage side. So, all right, that does it for the games. And so, because this is outdated by the time I'm recording it, Playdate number 8 has happened, I can't really look at the stats or the standings, but I can tell you the standings. I do have them on hand here. So I'll go top to bottom. And so we have Oxygen on 16 points, Sonics on 13, XZ on 12, TSM also on 12, XZ ahead by round differential, and then Parabellum and Astralis both on 11, Dark Zero, Space Station, and Beast Coast, all three on 9, and then at the very bottom we have Mirage on 3. And yeah, I guess not really anything else to talk about in the video. If you have any comments about whatever, feel free to leave them below. A like and a subscription would be appreciated. And with all of that being said, I will catch you guys in the next video.